All right, what's up, guys? Chuck and Nick here to bring you some NBA DFS goodness on this beautiful Monday, January 8th. Are we in here?
I think we're good now.
Okay. Sorry, guys. It's like our stream provider has been giving me some problems. Not sure why, but we're live now. And we have a pretty interesting slate today. There's two big pieces of news. Jason Tatum is out, and Damian Lillard is out. And so in my early runs, I'm getting a ton of bucks. I'm getting a bunch of Celtics. Nick, what about you?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, the Bucks value is all super chalky, and it's tough for me to feel great about much of it at their ownerships where they're at right now. But it's not like we have much to pivot to. The Celtics, obviously, with Tatum out, that opens things up, but it more so really just boosts the other starters. Probably going to get to some Pritchard, maybe some Brissett, but I mean, for how chalky some of this Milwaukee value is, I do wish I felt a little bit better about it.
Yeah, and with Pritchard, like he's the guy I'm trying to get away from. I think we saw the situation pretty recently, and we didn't necessarily see any increase in playing time for him when Tatum was out. But I believe Sam Hauser is also out today too, so maybe that is going to play a role in there. Just some other injury stuff. Kawhi is good to go tonight. Kevin Durant's probable. Zach Levine is questionable. I'm not sure that's going to change the slate too much. They did say that they're going to try to ramp up the minutes for him and Vooch. So maybe we're less interested in Kobe White and DeMar if we were interested in them at all.
Yeah.
And then Patrick Williams being questionable. Maybe it affects a role player on the Bulls or something. But since we're expecting them to be basically full strength tonight, minus Patrick Williams, so I'm not sure that it's going to affect much there. And Cody Martin is out for the Hornets. Caleb Martin is doubtful for the Heat. So let's just go ahead and dive into it. From the guard position, SGA and Giannis are going to be the two big popular payups. As we can see on the OF index, Giannis kind of get this here. Yeah, Giannis kind of broke the OF index tonight. This is just such an insane difference from the second place guy. But with SGA, how interested are we in him tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing more on FanDuel tonight, which makes it pretty easy to just go Giannis more so over him. But I mean, it's interesting. Like, this is as good of a spot as we're going to get with Giannis with Lillard out, but they lowered SGA's price and maybe the best matchup possible for him. So it's like, I don't know if they did this on purpose, but it actually makes the decision pretty difficult. I really like both of them a lot here. I could see, I don't know, it wouldn't shock me to see the Thunder blow out the Wizards, but it is a road game for them, so hopefully they can keep it close. I mean, both teams are kind of seeing similar matchups against really soft defenses, some slight blowout risk, but Giannis with the extra usage is definitely my favorite of the two, but you're paying a premium for him. Especially on DK. On FanDuel, they're only 500 different. I think it's a little bit easier to just go with Giannis over there. But man, SGA 10-4 seems kind of wrong for this matchup given how good he's been lately.
Yeah, it's I mean he should be 11K at least on DraftKings, and we're only looking at a 10.5 point spread, which is not quite blowout territory for me. We have seen Washington get super blown out with similar spreads like this, so it's something to be aware of. But his price is just too cheap, like you said. And then Jose Morales in chat, who's getting Lillard's minutes. And so Campaign is also out for Milwaukee, so we can't just play cheap Campaign. The chalk value is going to be Andre Jackson. It's 3,100 on DraftKings, 39 on FanDuel. It's kind of gross. We haven't projected for 25 minutes. Beauchamp for 26. Malik Beasley's not really a ball handler, but we haven't projected for 30. And then Chris Middleton for 31. I could see him getting that 33 minutes he's been getting recently. But, I mean, where are you expecting kind of Damian Lillard's usage to be spread out to besides Giannis?
I mean, Giannis, Middleton, and then Beasley should absorb a lot of it. We have seen at times Lopez kind of see spikes in usage, but it's really tough to kind of quantify that. Like, I don't know, it's super inconsistent with him, mostly because he plays next to Giannis. But for me, I mean, I don't know how much I can trust this value. I do think Jackson's going to have to do a lot of ball handling here. I mean, Middleton could kind of run like a point forward role, but I don't necessarily think that's what they want. I think they do see Jackson as a potential backup point guard. I mean, Campaign would be the guy, but again, Campaign's out too. So I don't feel great about the Jackson chalk, but I will say I think he is going to see the minutes. He should be doing some ball handling, and he's cheap enough that it probably doesn't kill you. So I don't know. I think most of it just goes to the other starters, mainly Middleton, Giannis, then Beasley. But as far as the value goes, I definitely trust Jackson more than like a Connington or an AJ Green. I do like Beauchamp, but he's a true wing. He's not really going to be doing that much ball handling, in my opinion. But we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, Jackson, Andre Jackson. So he is expected to start, and we've seen him get 36 and 26 minutes in a couple games this season. And I mean, he puts up 22 at 3,100. We're pretty happy with that. He played 36 minutes on 12-17, put up 22 and a half. If he plays 36 minutes, I mean, he fouled out in that game, but if he plays 30 minutes, we haven't projected for 25. It's hard to argue against playing him, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And again, it's not like we have a ton of great value that cheap to really pivot to. I mean, just looking on the Bucks roster, Ty Washington, former Houston Rockets there, but who's to say he even makes his way into the rotation with these guys out?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's just better to go with the chalk, get different with your payups if you can, or your mid-range plays, and hopefully it doesn't burn you here. But again, it's a great matchup as long as the minutes are there. I do think Jackson hits value, and like I mentioned, I do like Beauchamp as well. Beasley, not quite as cheap, obviously, but I mean, people are going to look at that game log. He's been terrible, but I do think he has upside here as well. So those are the three I like. Connington, I'm never excited to get to. Would it shock me if he had a good game here? No. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to be getting to a ton of Jackson here, a little bit of Beauchamp, but man, it is a little dicey not seeing this kind of play out that often recently, at least not without campaign.
Yeah, like everyone else is iffy, so I'm in on Giannis and I'm in on Chris Middleton at the
Oh, yeah.
7K flat price on both sites. Chris Middleton is actually by far, I have him 80% of my exposure right now. My early run on DraftKings, the second place guy is Andre Jackson at 47%. So to me, Chris Middleton is the best play on the slate. Between him and Giannis, they have to pick up the slack, and then Jackson's just too cheap.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll get to this a little bit more once we go through more of the positions. But the spot I'm actually getting different today, if you are eating the chalk, is I think Utah is severely underowned, and we've seen this a couple slates
Yeah.
pretty recently. I mean, Colin Sexton and Chris Dunn are pulling ownership. I'm getting a ton of Chris Dunn right now, but Jordan Clarkson at 15% seems a little bit too low. I think John Collins is too low. Laurie is too low. We'll get to them in forwards. But I mean, if the whole field is going to be playing a bunch of Milwaukee players, and it's an 8.5 point spread, it's not too bad. It's going to be, Vegas expects it to be close late in the fourth. Which of these Utah guards are you most interested in?
I mean, point per dollar, it has to be done, but I will say he definitely has the lowest ceiling of that group. I think I like Clarkson, especially on DK. 6,100 feels a little bit too cheap knowing his upside. The 72 on field not quite as appealing, but we always talk about how the Bucks are pretty decent defensively. Not that great in the backcourt, though. I don't think they're going to get much better with Dame out here. Not that he's some great defender or anything, but Clarkson has shown he has the highest ceiling in this group. And I think even coming off the bench, I love that 6,100 tag, and even at 7,200 on FanDuel, I can see mixing him in as a run back because a lot of my lineups are going to have $4 tonight.
Yeah, that's one thing too. Is I was debating what kind of rules I want to set, so I just kept it simple. I put max of $4, and then I think I'm gonna do something like I did max one of Beauchamp and Connaughton, but other than
Mm,
that, I'm not sure if I want to set any restrictions since we really haven't seen this situation before. We're not sure what they're gonna do with the rotation.
right.
So moving on to some other guards, I mean Halliburton going up against Boston, no Jason Tatum. Is pulling a lot less ownership than SGA. SGA projects slightly better, but it still kind of feels like Halliburton's a little bit too low owned. I've talked about before. Drew Holiday is an excellent defensive guard, one of the best in the NBA, but that's not going to stop me from playing Halliburton at 13% and 5%. I mean, the 11-3 on FanDuel is a little bit tougher to get to, but 10-2 on DraftKings, I think he's a pretty decent pivot if you're trying to fade SGA.
Yeah.
And then Jaylen Brown for Boston. How interested are we in Jaylen Brown? He kind of goes off and on, but I'm getting a decent amount of Jaylen Brown in my exposures right now.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, obviously, it's going to see increased usage here with Tatum out. Forward's not really all that deep tonight. I mean, it's interesting. We're going to have to talk about them coming up when we do get to forwards, but with this game, like I've gotten used to these late games being lobbed off the slate, and now tonight we have this 10:30 game, and I'm like, man, like I really don't want much here. It's like everyone in that game's kind of priced where they should be. But yeah, I do like Brown at his current ownership, but I don't mind pivoting to maybe some of the big three from the Clippers or even Booker from the Suns. I know KD's in tonight, but it's not going to feel good when your lineups are done and then a game starts at 10:30. Like I'm kind of surprised this game wasn't cut off the slate. I complained about what they were doing for the first few times, but it's like, okay, now you get me used to this, and now you're throwing this 10:30 game on, and we're also get the national championship game for college football tonight. So personally, I'm not all that excited about Suns Clippers at 10:30, But yeah, for me, I mean, I'm getting to Brown more than any of the pieces in that late game. I do think he makes the most sense as a small forward. I know we're talking about guards right now, but I would prefer to play him at that forward spot. But he looks really solid here. I'll use that to transition. I actually think my favorite Celtic here is Derek White.
Mhm.
He's been extremely productive this season. The DK price just seems wrong at 7-4. And a lot of these games that Tatum has had, it's actually been White that has really flashed a very high ceiling. So I love the matchup for him here. He is going to see some tough defense at times from Halliburton, Brown, etc. But again, this is such a good matchup for opposing teams. He's my favorite of this group. But I mean, if you can get to Jalen as well, I love it. Feel free. It's just going to be tough to really pay for a lot of these guys in the 8K range if you are paying up for Giannis and or SGA tonight. So you got to kind of pick your spots. I'm not going to say I don't like Jalen Brown here. It's just I'm not sure how high I'm prioritizing him compared to some of the other payups. I think it's easier to fit Derek White with a Giannis or an SGA.
No, I'm doing the same. Yeah, Derek White is the stud, I guess, from Boston that I'm getting the
It's
most. And
crazy, yeah.
yeah, like early in the season, it was Drew Holiday almost every time, especially since Derek White was pulling more ownership before. And we get a little price discount on Drew Holiday today, but it's just very clearly that more of the usage goes to Derek White in these kind of situations. And then Peyton Pritchard, I still don't know what to do with Peyton Pritchard. I'm getting too much of him. I'm trying to get away, but if I get away, it just gives me more Chris Dunn at the same price. So,
Yeah, I mean, the interesting play now with Martin out for the Hornets might be actually Bryce McGowan's. I think he's
mm,
shooting guard eligible on both sites, 3,900 on both sites. We have seen when he starts, he actually has a decent ceiling when he gets to 30 minutes. I don't know how much usage he's going to see next to Rozier, but they also have Hayward out too. So no Martin, no Hayward, obviously no Ball. I think there's enough maybe upside for him to be considered as a pivot off some of this chalkier value. Pritchard, for example, some of the Bucks pieces. And then Ish isn't starting, but I could see him actually having a decent game here coming off the bench, running that second unit. Again, no Hayward should benefit him here as well. Not a great matchup against Chicago, but these guys are going to be very popular. And I saw Jose brought up a good question. How many SGA with Giannis lineups are you playing? It's tough to do on both sides tonight. I think if you're doing something like that, you probably have to mix in some of these punts, maybe from the Hornets here. So I don't mind the value. I know we like to hold off on value when we have later games, but I don't think many people are going to flock to this one. And I do think McGowan's and a little bit less so ish makes some sense.
yeah, I like that McGowan's call. I think when I ran my stuff, we didn't have that starting lineup yet, so I was waiting to rerun it. But to answer that question, how many lineups have Giannis and SGA together? My single entry today has both of them. And I run a 150 set just to see what I'm getting. I only play 40 lineups on DraftKings usually, sometimes 60. But right now, 22 of my 150 have Giannis and SGA together. And just scrolling through, I have enough guys that are lower owned, like Nick Smith is showing up here, but you just mentioned Ish Smith. And so I might have to alter that a little bit. And then one of the lower owned guys, we'll talk about Koulibaly when we get to forwards, but I'm getting some Koulibaly at pretty low ownership as well. And so I think it's fine to play Giannis and SGA in lineups together. Just be cognizant of how chalky the rest of your lineup is. If you're playing all the rest of the obvious value, then it's probably just going to be a duped lineup. But just mix in, maybe two lower-ish owned guys, and you should be all right playing them together.
I'm with you.
And let's see, we have some other guards here. You mentioned Devin Booker. I mean, his price 9,300. It's coming down, coming in for 1% ownership, playing against the best team in the NBA, the Clippers.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm gonna have some GPP interest. We're getting a little bit of savings from SGA. I don't mind going there. What about some of these other mid-range guys? Terry Rozier, James Harden, Paul George. It's tough for me.
Yeah, it is tough, and again, it's just because of I don't know. There's other priorities at other positions, but I do think a lot of these guys make sense. I mean, I really like Harden actually. Like, if I am pulling a piece from that late game, he's been super productive. I think Kawhi on the back to back, maybe there's a chance his minutes get capped at some point. That game was super close last night, and they pulled him off the floor with like 4 minutes left. Gave the game away, and then brought him in with a minute left. It was like, what are we doing here, Tyloo? But yeah, so I could see more tomfoolery tonight at a tie there. But I don't think Harden's ever at risk for that. He's a guy who can play 44 minutes a night if he wants to, which is funny because he gets so much crap for coming in every season out of shape. But I mean, as far as just playing minutes, he's about as good as it gets. So I really do trust Harden here. And I don't imagine he's going to be very popular. One other guy, I do like Jalen Green on the Rockets. Obviously, not a good matchup. This total is very low compared to some of the other games, but he's been shooting the ball well. Very streaky player. I like to ride that wave when I can. I like the price at 6,500, and again, I don't think he's going to be very popular. So mid-range guy, maybe Jalen Green as a pivot. I also really like Harden as a pay up, and then you already brought up Clarkson. I actually think he's really solid on both sides as well as kind of a GPP play. So.
Yeah, I was interested in Jalen Green, and I usually never am, which is super weird, especially playing against Miami tonight. But
Yeah.
I have Jordan Clarkson, just a little bit better than him, and saving a few $100s. I'm getting Jordan Clarkson in all the spots I would expect Jalen Green to show up. But I do still have a few percentage of him in my runs. Let's go ahead and sort by value and see what's going on here. I mean, Andre Jackson, 3,100. It's hard to argue with that. Malik Beasley, looks like Malik Beasley is the top value over on FanDuel, actually, 4,400. Only projected for 33%. Does that seem a little bit low?
Seems a little bit low, and like I said, I think it's because people are looking at these game logs. Like he hasn't been shooting that often. He hasn't been shooting that well. Tonight he should see extra usage here again with Lillard out, obviously. So yeah, I'm comfortable getting to him. I thought he'd actually be more popular on FanDuel. You could play him at forward as well. I think he makes a lot of sense. Obviously some risk, but he's cheap enough that I think I trust him over like a Peyton Pritchard. I'm also going to have shares of. So priced about the same. Definitely can trust the minutes more for Beasley though, and it is a better matchup, or it's just as good of a matchup, I should say. Indiana's tough to compete with.
And I talk about that I hate chasing these guys that are relying on hitting threes when the rest of the field is getting there, but this is a spot where I am perfectly happy getting to whatever Malik Beasley I end up getting to. He's a little bit too cheap, and it's a very obvious spot for him to get more usage. And then scrolling down, I mean, Chris Dunn is showing up near top of FanDuel value as well. He's 5K over there, so I think I'd be a little bit more uncomfortable, but the 4,300 on DraftKings is probably a little bit too cheap
Mm-hmm.
for his role right now. THT is basically out of the rotation. I don't know, is he hurt or something? But he hasn't been playing recently. Unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah, he's out of it, I think. But yeah, no, I don't love Dunn on FanDuel again. I don't know. It's just rare he gets 25 plus minutes with all these guys healthy. But yeah, I did want to just, I mean, we'll talk about this when we get to forwards, but this is a good matchup on both sides for a lot of reasons. These teams kind of match up similarly. They're both pretty big. But yeah, Clarkson's my favorite of that group. Definitely like Sexton as well. I'm surprised by how cheap these guys are on
Yeah.
DK. FanDuel really ramped all their prices up. So much easier to get to these guys on DK tonight than it is on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean Utah across the board. I guess we can just transition to forwards right now. Like Clarkson's a little too cheap. Sexton is probably slightly too cheap for what his role has been recently, and then John Collins is too cheap. I think that Lauri Markkanen is too cheap. Walker Kessler, like this whole team is too cheap, and they're coming in for much lower ownership than you would expect, given the other side is the chalk today.
Yeah,
And so let's take a look at these Utah guys since we're on them. Like Chris Dunn having small forward eligibility on DraftKings, by the way, is pretty big.
yeah,
It's
that's huge.
something that I'm a big fan of. And then Lauri Markkanen, I think he's just, I mean, he's a good GPP play. If you, in this 8K range, I'm admittedly not getting to a lot of the other guys we talked about, those guards in that 8K range, except for Jaylen Brown is the only one. But I'm either paying up for Giannis and SGA or just paying down for the value. But Laurie looks good, and then John Collins, I believe he was back in the starting lineup, 52 and 5,500 for pretty low ownership. Big fan of John Collins tonight.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, he was priced around 6K plus most of the year. Hadn't been hitting value. Both sites dropped his price almost a full 1,000, and now he's kind of back hitting value consistently. Again, not drawing as much ownership as he probably should. Has power forward center eligibility, I think, on both sites. Yeah, just reasonably priced, good matchup. And the point I was going to bring up earlier before we got to forwards, both these teams are going to have to play pretty big tonight. So, like, I do like the spot for Bobby Portis. I think Kessler's going to look good. Collins, Laurie, Giannis. These are two big teams, even when they pull in guys off the bench. Kelly Olynyk as well. So I think both are going to run big a lot here, especially with some of the guards out from Milwaukee. So that makes me really like someone like Collins. And then Portis, I imagine, is going to be very popular on FanDuel. But this is the type of matchup where I do think he can see 25-ish minutes or so.
And before we move on to the other teams, I'll just mention Fontecchio has been a pretty decent GPP play at 5K, coming in for 4 and 5%. Don't mind mixing him in a few percent if you're playing a bunch of the other chalk. And question in chat: who's getting the start for Tatum? Is it O'Shea Brissett? I'm pretty sure it's not O'Shea Brissett. They've been bringing him off the bench even in these kind of spots. Right now, Underdog has a projected lineup as Al Horford starting for
Horford.
Jason Tatum. I'm not sure if they're actually going to do that, but I mean, it makes the most sense. I would have guessed Sam Hauser if Sam Hauser was in. But no, with Horford in the starting lineup, I don't think it changes too much. Like his usage is there, but the guys that we already like, Derek White, Jalen Brown, they should still be able to get theirs.
Yeah, I will say though, regardless of whether or not he starts, Brissett was someone I was digging into before we hopped on. I think he makes sense here. He should see extended run again with Hauser out here as well. The two guys that played before him are both out of the lineup. So yes, the guards could get more run. Yes, some of the bigs could get more run, but they're really not rushing to get guys like Bant or Svi McCaleb minutes. I think that's going to leave a little bit extra for Brissett. And if you look at his game logs, he's actually been playing pretty good basketball when he does get on the floor, pushing a fantasy point per minute even with the Celtics healthy. Again, tremendous matchup. Oh, and it's revenge here against his old Pacers team. So I think there's a lot of reasons to like Bracetta's value tonight, especially if the field's not going to get there.
No, I like that call a lot. This guy was one of my favorite GPP plays last season, just because, like you said, he did so well when he was on the Pacers. And yeah, if the field's not going to get there, I'm not going to say he's necessarily a pivot to Andre Jackson, but
Not
if he,
Jackson, yeah. But
his
I'd say
his
Connington and
mhm.
Beauchamp and everyone else, maybe. But yeah,
Just like looking how much the field is flocking to everyone else, Brissett's ownership is probably a little bit too low on both sides. I mean, the price is good, and so don't mind taking. I'm gonna have to mix him into my stuff a little bit more. And it's so fun to see the guy that broke the OF index is the second on DK value right after Andre Jackson, Giannis. And so if you need any more reason to play Giannis, the model is like screaming at us to just do so. And so gonna have a ton of Giannis tonight. Some of the other top guys we haven't mentioned yet, KD, Kyle Kuzma. I'm not too interested in Kyle Kuzma. Might get to some KD, but it's just tough because I like the other options more. But KD's pulling no ownership. Like you mentioned, that last game is kind of getting ignored, even though they tacked it on the slate tonight.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Katie did just come back from an injury. This is a back to back, but kind of like Harden, this guy's just a hooper. He's going to want to play his full minutes here, even if Vogel tries to slow him down. So I can see getting this some KD at the price. It's going to be difficult, but if he's not going to be owned, I think it does make some sense. And it is a fun sweat, I will say. There's no math to having to play these late games. People always want to ask the question, but I will say it's more enjoyable climbing a leaderboard because you have the silent game than watching your lineups fall. And I've definitely been on both ends of that hundreds and hundreds of times. So I don't know. Again, there's no real logic or math to playing the late game. Other than it's more fun sometimes. And I don't know, depending on how seriously you take DFS or what your risk tolerance is. For me, on a night like tonight, I mean, I don't mind just upping my exposure a little bit to that game, just to enjoy the sweat a bit more while I'm watching the national championship.
And so you guys know I played DFS pretty seriously, but I'm going to the Clipper game tonight when they play the Suns, and
Oh,
so
you
I'm
gotta
I'm
get there,
yeah
man.
I'm naturally just I boosted all of them just to try to
Let's
get a few
go.
percent more, add to the sweat. I'll be playing the single game showdown, but yeah, I mean if you whatever reason you can have to play the low end guys, I think just
Yeah,
do it.
and like I've played pretty seriously too. But it's like over the course of a season, if you have a few spots like this where you kind of lean into the fun once in a while, I mean, it does make it more enjoyable. We got to remember we're playing a game at the end of the day, even though we're tracking things, trying to limit bankroll and all of that. I mean, I don't know, just have fun once in a while, and this is a good game to do it. I think 233 totals high, two good teams. It's just tough because all the good pieces are expensive.
Mhm.
But yeah, we'll continue to talk about this game as we go through.
A couple other guys I wanted to mention in this mid range here. Denny Avdia is the one that's kind of interesting to me. He is off and on, but when he's on, and his minutes have been kind of up and down. But 3% over on DraftKings as a run back to SGA lineups, maybe at 6,400. How do we feel about Denny?
Love him. I do. Kind of inconsistent, like you mentioned, but I think this is the type of matchup he should be fine in. Denny is a guy who can handle the ball well. Played some point guard before he came over to the NBA, and yeah, he's certainly a wing on this team. But when you have guys like Jordan Poole who play off ball, I mean, Tyus Jones, kind of defense first, he really takes over this offense at times, and we've seen that. He does everything too. I mean, he gets you rebounds, assists, etc. Highest total game on the slate, or second highest total game on the slate, half a point behind Boston Indy last I checked. But really, really good spot for him here, and he fills a need at a thin position. You can play him in either forward spot. I like it a lot, regardless of whether you have SGA in your lineups. I think he's priced about where he should be. There's not much else like the 6K range that I'm trusting really, so I could definitely see getting a lot of Denny here.
And like I mentioned earlier, like if you're playing a bunch of chalk, find these 5% owned guys that you can mix in to just get a little bit more unique. And we haven't projected for 28 minutes. He got 33 in the last game. We've seen 31, 34, 35, I mean 20, 23. And so his minutes are just all over the place. And so at 3%, I'll take the chance that maybe he has a good game, plays 30 plus minutes tonight. And like you said, it seems like a game that he should do, a game situation that he should do well in.
Mhm.
It is kind of weird because he's not that much cheaper than Kyle Kuzma, who shows up much higher on the index with a higher value. But Kuzma, man, this guy has just been so bad. Are you looking at him at all tonight?
Not tonight, no. And I mean, he is a little bit more expensive, but it's 1K on each site. And I think tonight, where we're really trying to jam in some of these other studs, that 1K means a lot. So I'm comfortable getting away from it. Could he have a ceiling game here? Sure. But Kuzma, kind of similar to Jalen Green, is a very streaky player. When he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's off. You obviously want to be ahead of the field on that, but it's not a stand I really feel like I want to take tonight.
And one of the guys I mentioned earlier that I was pretty interested in, Bilal Koulibaly.
Mm.
I mean, he's projected for 6 and 7%. I think the 4,600 price on DraftKings is pretty good. The 4,900 on FanDuel isn't too bad. And it's like, yeah, he benefits a lot from a blowout run, but he's been getting close to 30 minutes. I guess I don't want to say more often than not, but pretty frequently. And it's taken a few minutes away from Denny, a few minutes away from Kuzma. But Koulibaly is a spot I don't mind taking some more shots on. Certainly more than Corey Kispert.
Yeah. Koulibaly, kind of similar to like a Luke Dort almost, in that he's going to get the minutes. You don't really know if he's going to be heavily involved offensively with them, but yeah, a little bit cheaper than Dort. Same matchup. I think you go either way there. I like both of those guys, kind of in a similar price range. And yeah, I really do kind of see them as similar DFS plays. And some nights you're going to get like 6, 7, 8x, and other nights you're going to be like, how do you only get 14 points in 34 minutes? But yeah, you got to take those types of risks in tournaments. So I'm definitely fine getting to some of him.
And so we haven't really mentioned Miami that much, but Tyler Harrow is. Just pull this up because I wanted to ask you about Nikola Jovic over on FanDuel at 4K. I'm getting to him a little bit at 4,700 on DraftKings, and we see the difference in the ownership. Is this guy a big part of what you're doing today?
Yeah, I mean, if he starts, I think he has to be again. We're really just scraping for value. I've been looking for pivots, and it's tough. I mean, in the same game, we have good old Uncle Jeff Green, which obviously feels terrible, but we're gonna have Tate starting here. Eason's out, so Jeff Green's actually been playing around 30 minutes per night in these situations. So I'm gonna have a lot of Jovic as making sure he starts though. But if he doesn't, you can pivot to Jeff Green and feel pretty decent about it. Only 300, I think, cheaper, something like that. Obviously, not as good of a play, but if Jovic doesn't start, I would be very concerned about what he's going to do here. So just keep an eye on that. I did want to bring up Kevin Love, too. He's coming off three ridiculous games. His price is up on both sides. But yeah, coming off the bench, I can't imagine he's going to be very popular, but I also can't imagine he went for three straight games over 30 fantasy points. It's a bit baffling. I know Butler's out. But yeah, if no one wants to go there tonight, maybe I'll mix him in a little bit as well. I do think there's decent pivots off Jovic, though. Love probably provides direct leverage, as does someone maybe like Jeff Green in the same game. So there are other ways to go, but at 4K flat, I can't lie. I'm definitely going to have some exposure. Again, we need all the value we can get tonight to fit as much Giannis and SGA as we can. And the Celtics.
Yeah, like I'm not getting too much Kevin Love, but I was still surprised I was getting as much as I am. But yeah, like you said, he's been great, and I'm glad you brought up Jeff Green because I mean, 34 minutes, and he played 33 a few games ago. Just the potential to get to 30 plus, cheap value play that no one's playing. Yeah, don't mind getting to much more than the field of Jeff Green tonight, projected for 5 and 1% ownership. Seems like a pretty good value GPP play.
Definitely.
And Kuzma's due. Well, these guys are never due, and especially if you're a Washington Wizard, man. Jordan Poole's been due all season, and he's been awful.
Yeah.
Max amount of Milwaukee players in one lineup. So I kept it simple and just put max of four. I mentioned I did do the rule max one of Connaughton and Beauchamp.
Mhm.
I didn't want to throw Andre Jackson in that because I think that he just plays regardless of what's going on with those other two guys. And then I'm not really getting that many lineups with four though. Like I'm getting a lot of Giannis and Middleton. I'm getting a lot of Andre Jackson, and then I'm getting a share of Connaughton here, a share of Brooke Lopez there. And we do have a question in the chat. Lopez at center go cheaper. I mean, let's just move on to a center here. If I had to guess, oh, Brooke Lopez is not the top of value today. Did I do this wrong? It's like the first time ever. This is the lowest that Brooke Lopez has ever been in the model.
Wow.
And so I actually might not get to much Brooke Lopez today. That's super weird. He's usually right here at the top.
Yeah, it's surprising. I mean, I do like mixing him in, especially in lineups where you can't get to Giannis, because we have seen Lopez's bigger games usually come when something goes wrong for Giannis, whether it be shooting or fouls, etc. So I do like him as a piece of leverage. You could definitely play him in lineups with Giannis as well. I think he's fine. Definitely easier to get to on 6K. And just still talking about centers, going back to Kevin Love, I think the reason he's tougher to get to on DK is he's center only. You have forward eligibility on FanDuel. But yeah, I do like Lopez. I think Portis is going to be the more popular play coming off the bench. Obviously, a little bit cheaper on both sites. You have that forward eligibility. But I did mention I do like the spot for him again because even with their bench mixed in, the Jazz are one of the bigger teams that the Bucks are going to be facing here. So I do like Lopez, but I also like Portis. But I imagine Portis is going to be more popular. So if you could find ways to pivot to some Lopez, I do think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean Bobby Portis, 15% on DraftKings versus 41 on FanDuel with
Oh,
basically the same price. Like, and it's hard to disagree. Portis is great. Yeah, I guess I'm not getting that much over on DraftKings. I'm at 9% right now. Might up that a little bit though, like you said. Utah. I mean, Utah's a big team. If Laurie Markkinen's at the 3 spot, especially. So,
yeah.
some of these other centers though, like who are the top centers that you're interested in tonight?
It's kind of tricky. I mean, if you consider Giannis the center, I guess I'd say him. I love Porzingis here. He's another guy who's had huge games with Tatum out. So if you can get to KP, I think he's probably my favorite pay up if you're not going to count Giannis there. But yeah, I mean, other than that, it's tough. I'm mostly paying down. I think Collins is actually going to fill some of my center spots on FanDuel. It's one of the rare nights where like you're not like only using true centers in the center spot. I actually think forward is deeper today, especially with some of the value we have. So like if you have Giannis and then you have Portis, like you're going to want Collins too, something like that. I actually think you're going to get some more of these forwards in the center spot tonight on FanDuel, especially. But I think Gafford is one of the more reasonably priced guys on either side, kind of boomer bust. I want to like the centers in this late game, Nurk and Zubac, especially since it's tough to find pieces from that game. But going through, it's like both have been limited on the back end of back to backs, and I don't know if there's any like firm truth to this, but it seems like they play their normal minutes on the front end, and then they miss a rotation on the back end. And I don't know if this is something we could bank on tonight. But like going in, I'm like, oh yeah, I need exposure to this late game. I'll just play a ton of Nurk and Zubac. But now I'm like looking into it, it's like every time these guys are on back to backs, it seems that they're cut to around 25-ish minutes. So I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned there. I don't know if you have a take on that. But like first thought was I'm going to load up on Zubac and Nurk on either side of this game and just have that be my late piece. And yeah, it's just the further I dig in, it's a little bit tougher to get excited about.
No, I actually didn't realize that, and I will say I'm more interested in Zubac than I am in Nurkic.
Yeah,
But I don't think so. It's like we don't love center today. Like you said,
no,
I'm allowing Giannis in my center spot. Usually, if you're using the builder, you could just say play minimum of one from this group or something, and add all the centers you want to play, and that's a way to do it there. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Kristaps and yeah, I mean, Kristaps, Giannis, Brook Lopez, John Collins are my top centers right now. And then one of the other guys I'm actually getting way more than I want of Walker Kessler, 5,100 on DraftKings. It's just, it's too cheap. And like the running theme of Utah guys being too cheap and underowned. I'm just going to play a bunch of Walker Kessler. It makes sense if he gets some playing time here. I don't mind playing him alongside John Collins. They can share the court together. I probably wouldn't play Kessler and Kelly Olynyk in the same lineup, but other than that, I'm not setting any rules for Utah. 6,600. It's probably a little bit too expensive to pay over on FanDuel, but we have seen some blow up games from him. And then, yeah, I mean, Gafford's just a dude. Sengun's a dude. Like Miles Turner's price on DraftKings seems pretty good at 7%, but I mean, for what it's worth, he's just a dude today. And then someone in the chat mentioned Bam. I don't mind Bam, and on the other side of that game, Sengun. Usually don't care about matchup for Sengun. I'll just play him a bunch anyway, every day. But I am slightly concerned going up against this Miami Heat team, and his price 8,500, still pretty good price, I think.
yeah, I will say Sengun's fine if you can get to him again. It's just we're prioritizing so many other pieces on the slate that he's just not really at the top of my priority list. I'll say the same about Bam. Like if you're landing on either of them, fine. I think it's good. And then we're getting multiple Chet Holmgren shouts out
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And here's the thing with Chet. His ceiling's awesome for his price. I really like him. I love the matchup. And I think there's some leverage maybe in lineups where you're getting to Giannis, but not SGA. I think Chet's kind of a good way to maybe leverage that potentially. So yeah, if you're landing on Chet, I do feel good about it. He's definitely more of a large field tournament type play for me, though, just knowing kind of how inconsistent he is. Not necessarily how he plays, but his minutes have been limited at times. Sometimes he's just deferring to SGA, and if he's not getting defensive stats, it's tough for him to hit his ceiling. But his price has come down, so I'm definitely comfortable getting to him. And honestly, this is a very, very good matchup for bigs. Gafford, I don't think is going to slow him down too much. So I do like Chad if you're getting to him. Definitely more of a tournament play for me, though. Probably wouldn't use him in small field single entry or cash games, but yeah, if you're landing on Chet, don't feel bad about it. And again, I think the best way to use Chet is in lineups where you have Giannis, but you can't quite afford SGA. Maybe you're landing on some of the Celtics cards. Use Chet as a piece of leverage there because maybe he has a huge game. SGA, he's going to have a good game, but maybe he doesn't have the ceiling game that people that are playing him want. And you got that double leverage there. Whenever you can kind of double up on leverage in that way, it can really help. It's rare that it plays off perfectly, but when it does happen, like I mean, there is logic to it, and that's what we're kind of seeing here, maybe for someone like Holmgren.
Yeah, I agree with all. Centers against Washington is definitely a thing. We have projected for 31 minutes. Like I said, it's only a 10.5 point spread, and so if it's close towards the end, these guys are going to be in the game. Pretty good total. Chet's a good play. It just, I mean, you're saving some money off of like Bam, Sengun, who are other decent GPP plays. So
Yeah.
and then is Grayson Allen a play? So for me, no. He's a little bit too expensive since he hit like 13 threes the other night or whatever. I think it was like 8.
Yeah.
But with Phoenix expected to be fully healthy tonight with KD, Beal, and Booker in. I mean, how does Grayson Allen get there? He just hits a bunch of threes, maybe a couple steals or something like that. But 62 and 6,300. Like I've said before, I'm okay overpaying for guys if I'm getting them at super low ownership on the chance that they'd go off. But this is a play I'm getting 0% of today.
Yeah, I actually been playing more Grayson this season than I ever expected I would be.
Yeah.
He's been really solid, but the price is up, like you said. Not the best matchup. If you're landing him on as like a last guy in, I think it's okay. He probably has like a 25 point floor, so if you're comfortable with that, you're probably playing something really small field or low risk cash game
Mhm.
type thing. I mean, the Suns player I'm actually probably going to get to more might be Metu, and I don't feel great about it with KD in. I mean, the more I look into it, maybe I don't get here. But Bol is out, who's been taking a lot of those Metu minutes. But the thing is, Gordon's back tonight, and Okogie's starting to see run again. So it's just really tough to kind of pluck anything from the Suns that isn't Booker or Durant. I love Beal, but I'm not playing him right now when this big three is healthy. It just seems like he's deferring. So um, yeah, Allen's not the worst play. It's just really a bad price, honestly. If he was like 1K cheaper, I'd definitely say yes. But with Gordon coming back, it's just tough to trust these secondary pieces for the Suns right
Yeah, we have a question in the chat. Could Durant play limited minutes? I feel like I saw a notification that he was playing or some minutes
now. It'd be
restriction, or
like
maybe it was he
monitored or
wasn't.
yeah, one of those
Okay.
stupid coach speaks where they're like, yeah, he might be monitored, maybe, but then KD just plays 40 anyway, and it doesn't matter. So yeah, I don't think he's limited.
Yeah. I mean, he's protected for 0% ownership, so if you are playing him in your exposures, you probably shouldn't be getting to too much of him anyway.
That's fair.
Then does Harden flirt with double double tonight? Harden flirts with a double double every night.
Yes.
It's so funny. I was out last week and I heard the game was on. Someone was talking about, oh, Harden's finally passing the ball. I'm like, what are you talking about? This dude has been
Never
passing the ball
does.
his entire career.
Yeah, whenever I same game parlay the Clippers, I don't touch Harden points, and I always go for assists.
Hmm.
He's a point guard here, and we saw it on the Nets too when he was next to Kyrie. Harden is known as a shooting guard, but he is a true point guard. DK has him listed as point guard, of course, now. But yeah, everyone just thinks of him shooting the threes, hitting the logo threes, and everything like that. But he's a really, really good facilitator. Most of his shots actually come on foul shots where he's cutting into the lane and looking to pass. So yeah, I love Harden. Definitely can flirt with the double double tonight. I think it's more often than not he hits the double on assists than points at times this season. So yeah, for sure, definitely.
Yeah, this dude, like, he just doesn't shoot the basketball. 13-7, 13-8,
Yeah,
thirteen
it's all
sixteen.
fouls.
Like,
Yeah,
he passes the ball, and he's very good at it. What does Lillard being out do to Milwaukee? So we talked about it a little bit towards the beginning of the show, but I think Middleton gets more ball handling responsibilities. Giannis gets more ball handling responsibilities. Maybe Andre Jackson helps handle the ball. But other than that, like we're not super excited about any of the other role players on Milwaukee. Maybe Andre Jackson just because he's 3,100, but uh, like
Yeah.
they don't have a point guard tonight.
Yeah, I mean Jackson's a play here on both sides. I think the minutes should be secure for him regardless. He's the one real punt we're trusting in the backcourt. Excuse me. But the thing with Dame, I mean, kind of opposite Harden at times, he's taking a lot of threes. He provides spacing for this very big team that has Lopez and Giannis on the floor most of the time. So to me, maybe that opens things for Beasley tonight. I think he's going to be able to take more threes. Will they fall? I don't know. But I do like Beasley's upside here again. They're going to need him as a spacer in the starting lineup that is very big with both Giannis and Brook in there.
So I wanted to pull up. I'm pretty sure Giannis had like a crazy Giannis and Middleton. I think their assist props are both 7.5 tonight, and so that just tells you Vegas expects them to handle the bulk of the ball handling. Yeah, Giannis 7.5, Chris Middleton 7.5. Giannis is slightly favored to the under. Chris Middleton slightly favored to the over. So I don't feel like you have to play a bunch of these Milwaukee guys. Giannis, Chris Middleton, Andre Jackson are my three highest exposed players right now. Maybe Andre Jackson changes, but I'm not going to get to too much of the rest of the team. Just little sprinkles here and there.
Yeah. I
So
do. I do want to say I really like Malik. The more I think about it, just like
mhm.
from a game theory perspective, and especially if those assist rates are higher. Like, is it going to be to each other every time? No. I mean, Beasley's going to
Right,
be open for three a
yeah.
lot. So again, they need to fall, and we're relying on them falling. But I do think he has plenty of upside here.
Yeah, just I mean, he took 8 threes a game, 9 threes a game for a while, and last couple games, 1, 4, and 5. His minutes have been down, but with Lillard and Campaign out tonight, I mean, as long as he's not playing awful, he should be on the court. And I mean, 30 plus fantasy point potential in 40 minutes, like it's something
Yeah.
we should be interested in. And so, all let's talk about Milwaukee. Are we starting our dummy build with Giannis, Middleton, and Andre Jackson? Are we cool with all three of them?
Yeah, let's do it, and let's see for the sake of the show if we can jam SGA in there too.
Okay, let's get what position is Andre Jackson? Point guard.
He is point guard
Point guard,
and
small forward.
small forward. Yeah, so
Okay.
probably small forward.
Okay, let's put Middleton at shooting guard. We'll
Yeah.
put Andre Jackson at small forward, and then we'll put SGA at the point and see what that looks like. Who's your top value play outside of this team?
Um, let's see. It's I don't even want to say it out loud because if it burns everyone, I'm gonna feel bad. It might be Brissett.
Let's
The
do it.
more I think about it, with Hauser out and Tatum out, I think he's gonna see the floor a lot here. He's dirt cheap. And again, there's some revenge narrative here in front of his former home crowd. So I like O'Shea for a lot of reasons.
Can we comment on which Clippers star we prefer? My default answers are usually Kawhi or Paul George. I think James Harden's price is a little higher than I'd like to pay tonight, but none of them are super appealing. But the model prefers Kawhi very slightly over Paul George. But if I'm getting to any of the, like, I'm gonna get to them just because I'm gonna be at the game. But
Hell
Paul
yeah.
George at 8,400 is probably the guy that I'd be most interested in. I think.
Yeah, for me, it's probably George point per dollar. I do really like Harden, but he is a touch more expensive. And I brought it up before. Kawhi, I mean, Lou's been kind of weird with his minutes. Again, he got pulled late last night, like when he shouldn't have, just to kind of cap his minutes. And then they put him in for one. I don't know. Just can't wrap my head around what's going on with the minutes limit for him. But he is playing on a back to back. If anyone were to see the rotation cut, I think it would be Kawhi. So there's a little bit more risk with him. Usually is the highest ceiling in the group, though. But for me tonight, I do like George. I'm fine getting to any of the three,
Well, you haven't seen the conspiracy theory that Ty Lue pulled Kawhi so the Lakers would win to save Darvin Ham's job, so he has an easier time beating us in the playoffs.
though. I mean, who's to say the Lakers don't go on a losing streak next week? And then what? It's like, I don't know. I mean, do they really weigh the LA matchup that heavily, like in the regular season? I did hear Ham like
Uh,
pissed off in a post conference or press conference recently. He's like, "You guys are living and dying with every game. It's ridiculous." It's like it was a
yeah.
long season, and like I kind of agree with him. Like when you're a top team, I mean, the Lakers aren't quite there yet right now, but I don't know. It's tough to live and die with every game. It puts too much pressure on teams.
I mean, we're almost halfway through the season, so we
Yeah, they got to
we
ramp it
got to
up.
pick it up.
They got to move D'Lo. Yeah, we could do a whole hour on just that, I think.
And we have a question: why do we like SGA over Tyrese? I'm sure it's the matchup, which is why projections favor SGA today. The model doesn't have SGA that much over Halliburton, and with the difference in ownership,
Ownership.
and it's only 10.5 point spread, but we know Washington gets blown out like every other day. I don't mind pivoting to Tyrese Halliburton, save a couple hundred over on DraftKings if you're trying to get away from SGA. But SGA is going to be the preferred play today, as reflected in the ownership and the model.
Yeah.
And then Bridges, Jovic. We didn't touch too much on Charlotte, but I mean, to me, he's just a guy. I might get there a few percent, but not somebody that I'm taking a super hard look at.
Um,
And
yeah, no, I feel the same. The second comment just gave me a heart attack, though. Is AJ Green really starting?
did we get a notification on that?
I just saw someone say it. I'm refreshing it, like, hoping it's not true.
Well, Underdog is projecting Andre Jackson to start, and every other. I don't know that we've had many games with Dame Lillard being out, but every other situation where the Bucks are short, they're starting Andre Jackson. So I would expect him to start until we hear otherwise.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's a FanDuel or DraftKings thing where
Put the
they,
check or
they put the
whatever.
check marks just for
Yeah,
everyone watching, and I'm not trying to patronize. Whenever DK or FanDuel have starters, ignore them. Like,
yeah.
just get the official NBA site or Underdog's Twitter. Honestly, just that's the way to go.
And then Jovic, yeah, I don't mind Jovic. His price is better over on FanDuel. His
Make
minutes
sure
are
he
going to be all
starts.
over the place. Yeah, if he's starting, I think he's a fine, kind of a value GPP play. I guess he's more value over on FanDuel.
Yeah,
Middleton and Caruso or Powell and D White. Don't really like answering 1v1s, 2v2s because we're going to be wrong almost half the time. But Middleton is my top play overall in the slate tonight. And then Derek White is the guy that we're both most interested in from the Celtics. So if you can figure out another way, maybe get both of those guys in the lineup, then we like that a lot.
yeah. It's funny. I don't like Powell. I don't like Caruso. I like the other halves of that. So
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe try to find something else in the mid range there that you feel okay with. Maybe Beasley instead of Caruso, something like that.
And we just got confirmation it is Horford starting in place of Tatum. Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jalen Brown, Al Horford, and Porzingis. The Bulls are starting White, Caruso, DeRozan, Williams, Drummond. But I believe I did see something that Levine and Vooch's minutes are going to be ramped up today. So Chicago's just kind of a mess right now. Wizards, same starters. Pacers, Halliburton, Bruce Brown, Naismith, Jalen Smith, and Miles Turner. So nobody healed in for the Pacers. Everything there is as expected.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Al Horford's not getting much interest. I think he's a fine guy to mix in since everyone's going to be playing a bunch of Porzingis anyway. But let's close out this dummy build and get out of here in a couple minutes. Was there a center that we should be interested in today? That's kind of cheap, I guess.
John Collins.
Yeah, we'll put in John Collins at the center spot here, 5,200, which leaves us 46 for two spots. We already have two super value guys in Brissett and Andre Jackson. I mean, do we want to just throw in Chris Dunn since it's the easy guy, or Pritchard maybe?
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe Malik Beasley, but I'm fine with any of those.
Let's throw in Malik Beasley.
You
Actually,
can start.
I was gonna say let's put in Chris Dunn since we already have three
Yeah,
Milwaukee
get the
guys,
run
but
back.
I'm perfectly fine playing four Milwaukee guys tonight. And then you mentioned Bryce McGowan is pretty good value too. Leaves us 4,900 for the utility. McConnell's not really a play anymore with Nemhard in. I think he's a little bit too expensive. I mean, Jovic 4,700. It's kind of uncomfortable over on DraftKings. I like Koulibaly at 4,600 as kind
Yeah,
of a low end play.
I'll go with your call on Koulibaly. I can see it.
Yeah. And so I think that the core, though, like Brissett's going to come in low owned, but this could be a real difference maker today if it allows you to fit in another stud. But because he is low, and I'm just going to take him out right now. But I think the rest of this is a pretty strong core. You don't necessarily have to play all the guys from the core, but if you don't have, like, I would still want at least probably three of these guys in my lineup.
Yeah.
And so,
Middleton, Jackson, Giannis are the top one plays on BK. I think that's really your core over there. And
yeah,
then on FanDuel, it gets a little more interesting. It's Middleton, Portis, Beasley. And at their prices, I get it. I don't think you have to force it as much, though. I think you probably want to get Middleton as a core play on FanDuel if you can as well.
I agree. Yeah, Middleton to me is just the top play over the easiest play to make on the slate today. Should be the first guy that you're starting your lineups with.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, Cree Skills Gaming, C Skills Gaming, sorry. What are your thoughts on Bruce Brown? Bruce Brown is never going to be a guy I'm in on unless he's super cheap. And 5,100, like, yeah, he's flashed a ceiling here and there this season, but I think we can accomplish the same thing with other guys today.
Yeah, he's last man in, okay, especially if you're
Yeah,
heavy on Boston, but not a priority.
yeah, and his minutes lately have been bad. Any Miles Bridges, getting a little Miles Bridges,
Yes.
like a
I like
couple percent. I don't hate him. And then
yeah.
what about Beauchamp?
Yeah, I mean, Beauchamp off the bench is actually the one I probably trust more than Connington, more than Green.
Mhm.
So I'm fine getting to some Beauchamp for sure. We've actually seen some decent games out of him, which is more than could be said for some of the other value we have tonight. So, yep. But yeah,
I,
okay.
I will say I prefer your O'Shea Brissett call over Beauchamp today, especially with the ownership difference. So
Yeah,
something to keep in mind.
wild on Brissett. I mean, hey, I'm probably gonna live or die with him tonight. But yeah, again, revenge. Not that that's the reason to play him, but the two guys on the depth chart in front of him are both out.
And last question before we get out of here: Brissett and Horford. I mean, I don't mind it. Horford, we can probably expect to play 30 minutes, and Brissett. I mean, if Horford's at the center, Brissett plays power forward. They should share the court together a little bit. I would just, depending on what kind of contest you're entering, these are two guys not pulling much ownership, and so if you are doing that, I would probably try and be kind of chalky with the rest of my lineup if you're going that route. So, any final words, Nick?
No, not really. Just yeah, a lot to like here. Don't force too much of the Milwaukee value that you don't like necessarily. Definitely keep an eye on starting lineups. It should be Andre Jackson next to Malik Beasley. Um, and then yeah, if you're going Joe, but just make sure he starts. Pretty tight slate tonight, but again, always keep an eye on lineups news. I think we got Discord going now too, so all the more reason to get in there.
Yeah, actually, not a bad slate. I thought it was not a good slate, but I kind of like this slate now after we talked through it. So appreciate you guys watching, and we will be back tomorrow. Thanks.